Welcome back to Keep Your Torch Lit podcast. I'm Sam.
Oh, and I'm Ian. Hello.
Ian Harris. I haven't heard that name in quite a while. It seems like you've been kind of off the grid for been watching All Stars.
That's true. That's true. I haven't been making my appearances on Keep Your Torch Lit. It's been quite some time, and yeah, I've been staying off the map. I've done very little lately, having to do with Survivor. So really, no one knows what's been going on with me of late. No one has seen me. That's for sure.
Yeah, the rumors are that you're just like putting all the footage through like some sort of AI that's just like editing all the episodes, and
Yeah.
you're taking all the credit when really all you do is just kind of sit around and
No, that's true.
push some computer.
It's actually called Richard GPT. It's a Richard Marks AI program that you put it through it, and it will just generate episodes of Survivor for you while spitting out random numbers. So I highly recommend that if you've been struggling to finish your Survivor season, like I can give you a link to the Richard GPT, and it will help you out.
It sounds like a lot of sounds like it would be a lot of work to like filter through and get rid of all the random numbers though.
Yeah, that's the part's kind of annoying, but definitely doesn't take as long as like editing the season yourself would take. So
But yeah, for real though, Ian, just wanted to have you on to hear your takes on the pre-merge of Survivor Michigan All Stars. Like, want to say too, I've been really loving the season. I've been really enjoying it. And I know that you've been putting an insane amount of effort and time into it. So, first off, wanted to give you your congrats for a really well edited season, and we're halfway through. It's kind of crazy.
I know. Well, technically, we're not halfway through. Actually, we'll be halfway through after the next episode, because there's going to be 15 episodes total. So we're a little bit under halfway through. But yeah, thanks. It's been a really crazy season so far, and definitely slightly more controversial than I expected it to be, which is interesting because it's a very high intensity season. Like I feel like I forgot, having edited it. I've been so many years editing it and so many years knowing what happens, that all of like the twists and turns are kind of like, it's kind of like, it comes kind of what's the word for it? You become desensitized to it. I forgot when you're there how emotionally intense it really was, and how just like surprising everything that was happening was. And I feel like the audience is kind of going through a little bit of what the players were experiencing, in terms of like, this is like really, really serious business. And you think, oh, All Stars is just going to be all fun and games. But then like, it's really not. It's really pretty emotionally intense. And there's a lot of somewhat dark stuff happening at times, along with all the fun and games as well.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a very exciting season to watch, but I kind of also see how it can be exhausting because so much is happening. I think that this 2-week break is like a good time. Like I feel like it comes at a good time for everyone to kind of like, all right, let's decompress about what happened in this whole very eventful pre-merge. It feels like the pre-merge itself was its own season of Survivor Michigan.
It kind of feels like it was. And to me, part of why I did the like the Act 1 ending sort of thing was that I really saw this season as having a few distinct like stories amongst itself. And this first half definitely feels like a distinct story from the next half. That feels like a very different kind of story. Like we see a lot of our like biggest plot lines from the first half of the season. Megan and Jackson dating, Cooper with the Phantom vote. When's the Phantom vote going to get played? Some of the stuff like that, it kind of wraps up in this episode. And it, of course, across episodes 6 and 7, which I feel like is sort of like a finale of sorts to the first half of the show. And then we're setting up some new plot lines that are going to take us into the later episodes and see where things go from there.
Ooh, new plot lines. Sounds spicy. And we're gonna have the return of Abby come back in the post.
No more Abby. But I will say though, there's a lot of some of the stuff that I saw a few different complaints about. Some of the editing was like, Abby, like why would you give Abby so much screen time or like showcase her in this fashion when this is like what she wanted, or you're giving her what she wanted basically. And I think my view on it was like, there's like, if I were a Survivor player, how I would view the situation, when I was on production, how I viewed the situation, as a viewer, how I would think of it, and then as the editor, how I would think of it. And those are all kind of different things. And as the editor, I don't care what's fair, what's not fair, like who got screwed over or like what. All I care about is what is good TV or what is the most dramatic, what is the most compelling TV. And so, like, as a producer, I was mortified this Abby thing had happened. I wish it had never happened. And I was worried that it was going to wreck like the season. It didn't end up wrecking the season at all, really. As an editor, saying I'm glad it happened, it would be like going a step too far, I feel like, because like it could have been really exciting if that hadn't happened. But it certainly didn't bother me as much as you would think because I thought it was really compelling. It's like everyone loves a good villain. It allows us to bring back Abby, a more or less forgotten character, and like recontextualize her, give her a much more interesting kind of storyline. And I feel like if it hadn't happened, that tribal is just kind of a boring like 4-2 vote, and it's just an easy split vote, and Aaron or Dylan goes home pretty much without any kind of problem. So I'm kind of glad that it happened because it gave us a really spicy tribal, and I'm not that convinced that like Megan and Jackson's idols and all that stuff being secret would have led to necessarily more dramatic things happening than what ended up happening, to be honest. Like, it doesn't really get shown too much on the show, but in the bonus scenes for episode 2, there's a scene where Andrew and Bailey actually come across Megan and Jackson idol hunting. So like the idea that Megan and Jackson were like at least closer than they let on had already kind of been floating around. Like it wasn't like it was shocking they were dating, but the idea that they were working together really wasn't that shocking as it may have seemed in the show. So like I think if it had eventually come out they were dating, I don't know. In the show, it didn't even really end up having that much of an impact. Like most people were like, okay, and then went on with their lives for the most part. To the point that I think it helped Jackson. People were then actively trying to work with him because they knew that he was working with Megan. The fake idols is more interesting, but like I feel like eventually Megan probably would just told you guys about them, but it's hard to say for sure. The fake idols, I'm more curious what would have happened.
I definitely, one of the comments I saw a few times is people feeling like they were disappointed that like, wow, these are like the fake idols and the Megan and Jackson secret relationship were two of my favorite storylines, and I feel like both of them are just like cut short. It is interesting to think about like where would those storylines have gone, but it also is like a fair point that wouldn't they have ended in a way that was as entertaining as the way that it did. Some people, I think a lot of people would say no because they weren't maybe entertained by what happened. They were like almost entertained. Sure, it's dramatic, but it's dramatic in a way they didn't like because they like they love Megan and Jackson. You don't want to see Megan and Jackson get screwed over by something out of their control.
Yeah, that's fair. And without being able to compare the two, it's really hard to say, right? One other thing that I do find interesting about it from a storytelling perspective is that like one of the things that it seems like people have kind of struggled with a little bit with the season that I didn't anticipate was that for me, one of the things that made this like, I'm coming at this from, I was never a lifelong Survivor fan. I got into Survivor through doing this, like through meeting all of you guys and editing Survivor Michigan. Like when I edited season 2, I had never seen a season of Survivor. And then the first Survivor season I watched was Survivor Maryland All-Stars, which I didn't watch till after I finished season 2. So like, I really didn't know a lot about what I was doing when I got into it. And now I've seen a bunch of Survivor seasons since then, obviously. But after I watched tons and tons of them, to me, like Survivor seasons, they kind of all blend together eventually. They're all kind of the same. And something I really loved about College Survivor is how different it is. It's a different twist on the game. And that's why I'm like, I like seeing different things, in my Survivor and different stuff happening. And what I liked the most about this season before editing it, I thought seasons like 1, 2, 3, and 4, great seasons, great Survivor seasons. But to me, All-Stars, I was like, this could be like great TV. Like separate from Survivor, this is like a really compelling story about not just like these college students trying to play Survivor, but like the whole first era of Survivor Michigan is kind of about like the formation of a community. And like the first couple seasons, these people don't know each other at all, But by the time of All-Stars, they all know each other. And it's about like, how does this community deal with ultimately going through like a traumatic event, which is them playing this game for 100 days when they're all friends and they're dating, and we've already seen it play out a little bit where like, it's asking all these questions of us of where is the line? Like, is it okay to lie, to like come over to your house, say, and tell you, hey, I broke up with my boyfriend. Let's have a really long emotional talk about this. And for that all to be fake. It's 3 months before the game. Is that out of bounds? Or is that totally fair? And there's so many questions like that throughout. And Abby ultimately coming into this and having an impact on the season. Yeah, it's not really fair. It's not what you'd want in like an ideal closed universe. But this isn't a closed universe, right? And like there was lots of fans who were really annoyed that, Camila wasn't on the season and like some other people like Katie weren't cast in the season. And Abby is almost like a reaction to that. Like, yeah, those people were also mad about not being cast in real life. And we only cut like 4 or 5 people. And like, how does those people feel? Like they were part of the community also. And we're basically telling them, like, you're not good enough to get to do the thing that we've all been doing all these years. Like nobody got cut from production. Everybody was allowed to be involved. But now we're saying, oh, now you're not good enough to get to still be part. Like that's like voting people out before the game even starts. It was production voting people out. And how do they react to that? And it's like, yeah, Abby was mad and she took it out in a pretty, like, not maybe a way I wouldn't have, or not like necessarily the most mature way of doing it. But it's also kind of like there's not a lot of incentive for those people not to do something like that. And it kind of just builds into the overall like storyline. I don't know, it's interesting. It's not clean, it's really messy.
I do agree. It's, for me, and maybe everyone doesn't see the TV the same way that I do in this way, but to me, compelling television doesn't necessarily have to be something that like makes me feel happy all the time. Like I tend to enjoy like movies and TV shows where like I feel like I have a gut punch. I mean, I don't know why there's the first thing that came to mind, but I think of and if you haven't seen Breaking Bad, Breaking Bad spoilers, skip like 20 seconds to the future. But the scene where in was it what Ozymandias? I don't remember how to.
Oh, yeah.
The one where Hank gets killed in front of the wall, and how like gut wrenching that scene is, and how like it's stuck with me so long, and it's a scene that I will never forget. But it's not a scene I will never forget because I loved it, or because the good guys win. It's like just because it's very emotional and it feels so unfair and it feels so tragic. And to me, that's compelling television is tragic sometimes, and there's things that happen in Survivor Michigan All-Stars and the pre-merge that feel tragic and unfair. Like, yeah, we don't see like Camila on the season. We see Megan and Jackson, like their relationship is spilled to people, even though they, trusted production and they trusted that the information would stay private. And you see, lying about relationships. You see Aaron and the way that she's impacted, and Will, the way that he gets betrayed. Like these things don't necessarily make you feel good on the inside, but it's like you can't look away either, and they stick with you. Lucy getting like advantaged out right before the merge, right? Like those things like stick with you and they feel tragic, but it's like it's also compelling television. You can't deny that it is. So I don't know. Maybe it doesn't always make you feel happy, I guess. But there's also things that do make you feel happy in the season too. You do also see underdogs making moves and people forming relationships and a lot of funny things. So like, I don't know. For me, it's like I can enjoy television that's compelling, even though it isn't necessarily always happy. But I can understand how like, people's gut reactions to these things is like, oh, that was terrible. Like I hate that happened.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I totally get it. And everybody has their own favorites coming into it. So it's like, unlike previous seasons, this season, everybody's rooting for someone specific who they liked on the previous seasons. And I tried as hard as possible to give everybody, even the people who went home early, as much, room, as much screen time as possible to get them like I feel like every person on this season got like their all-star moment to like some degree, even the people that went home kind of early, they have some memorable moments. They got some good lines in, and the vast majority of them got like full stories, like I think Will has a full arc over the course of the 4 episodes he was in. And there's lots of other people like that also. Yeah. And it's not to say that like, the whole season is going to be just like doom and gloom. Like there's a lot of uplifting moments. There's a lot of like, there's a lot of great stuff to come in like the post merge. And I don't want to make it sound like it's going to be like a downer, because I really don't think that's what it is at all. But if you're rooting for all these people, then yeah, it is. Ultimately, Survivor is like for 20 of the 21 people, it's a tragedy. Well, it's a 0-sum game. Only one can win. So like people might get, victories here, victories there, or like losses here or whatever. But at the end of the day, only one person is going to win. And for everyone else, it is a tragedy ultimately. And when you care about as much as these people do, it's just like on previous seasons, there's people that get voted out and they're kind of like, whatever. Or there's Andrew, even in season 3, Andrew, one of the most brutal endings to somebody in All-Star Michigan, gets rocked out and he goes, well, All-Stars, right? But
Yeah.
there's no version of that this time, because like if you get rocked out of All Stars, you're done. There is no second All Stars. Yeah, this is it. And I think there's like something to that as well, like how deeply people knew that this was like their one shot.
That's very true. You know, only one can win. It is like a tragedy for everybody else, but at the same time, like, I mean, I would even say look at someone like Sarah. You know, we don't know what's going to happen in the post merge, but Sarah was our first boot. She was the first person voted off of season one, and she is now like at the merge. She's made it past the jury stage. She's already made it so much further than she did last time. To me, it's like it almost doesn't even matter how her story ends, because in that case, like for someone like her or like Andrew, who like went out due to rocks and like what the third tribal council in his season, like Adam, who didn't survive a tribal council, like you're already seeing people like kind of redeem some things in their past, even just in this first half of the season. We don't know how the second half is going to go. Maybe these stories will end in tragedy. Maybe they won't. But I mean, that's to your point about like, sure, it is a tragedy for 20 out of 21 people, because only one can win. But at the same time, like I I feel like the story that you're telling isn't always just about like who wins. That is very important in Survivor. It is a
Oh
story
yeah,
who
that's
wins.
another thing.
There's a lot of other stories where you can find redemption and victory without necessarily winning the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because like a lot of Survivor fans and lots of people I'm friends with from Survivor Michigan, view a season really strictly based on like the boot order and like who wins and who loses. And the boot order, that makes a little more sense to me. Like if all the best characters get voted off like early on in the season, I can be like, oh, I don't really want to watch the rest of it if there's nobody left that I like. I don't think that's what All Stars is, because like I think there's so many compelling people like throughout that you could have rotated the boot order. You could have randomized the boot order like 100 times, and I feel like there's never going to be one that I would have been like, oh wow, like there's only like scrubs left or something, because there's too many people who are interesting. This season, it's also about, it's not just about who wins, but it's about like each person's storyline, and like Erin gets like a whole story. It's like about her, even though she doesn't win, she has like an important part in the season. And so, like, I saw some, they're like, why would you build up people like Erin and Jackson if they're like these great underdogs if they're just going to go home early? Like that doesn't make sense. And CBS, definitely doesn't do that. CBS definitely, in a lot of seasons, they'll not, if people don't do super well, they won't hype them up. They'll specifically hype up players that are going to do well that they want you to root for. But that's just never how I've looked at it, because I'm like, that's like less interesting. I don't like watching a season where I don't know who half the cast is. Like, I want to know who everybody is. I want to know what they're doing and what their storyline is. And also, like, it's not just that all the people in the show are friends, but I'm also friends with all the people on the show. Like, even more so than any of the other seasons, I probably consider myself like close friends with like 18 out of these 21 people, like maybe all of them. And so it's like, I'm not gonna, and they've been looking forward to this for years and years. And there was really no world where like a lot of those people like Erin or Will or Jackson, I was gonna be like, yeah, you didn't do very well, so like you just don't get that much screen time.
Yeah.
Like that's like just not really how it was gonna be. So that was like just never really in the cards for it to go down that way.
No. And it's interesting, like something I've always thought about, not even just the show, but I guess everything around it too, like Keep Your Torch Lit podcast and all the bonus content and everything that we've done over the last like years. Like it definitely is done for the fans, but it's also like, I feel like it's also very much done for the people that were directly like playing. Like that's very much like this show is for them too. It's for the cast, like, and their friends and their family. And like, especially when this started, I remember like season 2, like we didn't really, I guess season 1 had already been successful. People were watching it. We didn't really know how many people were going to watch season 2, but at the time it was like, hey, like the season 2 cast really cares about this and their friends care about this and they're going to want to see it. And like, same thing for All Stars, like you said, the cast really cares about this and they are been excited for years to like see it come out. At least most of them. I don't
it's
know,
been like it's been amazing to see like how many people care about it, because like, yeah, when season 1 obviously was successful, but when I agreed to do season 2, at that point I hadn't agreed to do any of the other seasons really. And probably for the most part, up until season 2 came out, most people probably didn't think there was going to be more seasons in Survivor Michigan. There wasn't really a strong plan for season like 3 and 4, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I was editing season 2, I ended up really enjoying it, and I just had a feeling about All Stars, and so I was like, "Who's in charge of editing All Stars and stuff?" And there had been no one in charge of it yet, so I was like, got back. I really didn't do anything for production on seasons 3 and 4, but I like re-engaged myself before All Stars started, and like made myself like in charge of the filming aspect of production, and like really got much more involved than I had been previously in the actual production side, just because I had a feeling about it. And as soon as All Stars started, I was like, well, we have to get to this one, because again, like I just thought it was so compelling and so good that like it had to be told. But when season 2 was definitely season 2, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna finish this because I told these people that I would, like the people in the club, you know, on season 2, like you or like Maggie and Nick and like Bailey and all those people. I told them I would do it, so I was gonna do it. But the other seasons and this one, it is because like it is partially also like the fans that keep it going, and the fact that we've like released like podcasts about season 2.5 and people are like interested in it and really care about it, you know, that means so much to us. Like we do so much work on it that in some respect it's like I'm just excited that there's been so much response to All Stars, like positive or negative, because it just shows how much people care about it. It shows that we made something that people care about, which is the most important thing. Like, you know, like people are so mad. People would like, if people didn't care about like, you know, Jackson or Aaron, then they wouldn't, then it'd be like, okay, whatever, someone got voted off, what do I care? But to see the huge response to these people, and you know, people love them so much that they're so sad and upset when they get voted out, that adds something to it. It feels very empowering, I think, for us and for the players themselves as well.
Oh, definitely. It makes it so much more fun to watch, knowing that like people care about it. And yeah, I mean, Lucy was just saying it on our exit interview. Like she really appreciated all the fan support, and like it's really cool to see people care about it and like root for it and watch the show and subscribe. And like it's funny too, you mentioned the 2.5 and 4.5 podcast. Like at the time that we were playing those games, like I doubt like there's zero chance that anyone expected that to anyone else to ever like care about it or like listen to it.
No, if you had told somebody for either of those, for like 4.5, oh yeah, like one day people will like, we don't know, will watch this and like be interested in it, people would have like laughed at you, right?
Yeah, playing these like silly Skype games, like whatever. never thought that would ever like that anyone would ever care about it.
Yeah.
I hope Swooper Kevin, by the way, watches that podcast. He deserves his dues after all this time.
Nick and I tried to get him on it, but he like said he didn't remember enough to be on it.
That's fair. I don't think that anybody remembered much of it. I think Nick had to like read all the stuff to like remember what happened.
Yeah, but we were like, oh, it'd be fun to have one of the Swoopers on it, you know?
Oh yeah, Kevin, man, I do robbed. He should have Carrie. Actually, he should have had his mom on there. That would have been great.
That would have been great. That would have been hilarious.
Yeah, man. So Ian, at the very beginning of this, you mentioned being like surprised in some ways by like some of the fan reactions to the show. Like, what has surprised you the most?
Well, like, I'm trying to think. I mean, it's interesting. Like, it's hard to predict who people are going to become fans of, you know? Like, I knew Sarah was going to be a fan favorite. I was like, that one I could feel there. And,
yeah,
like, I knew Megan and Jackson were going to be fan favorites, but not to the extent they were. Like, I thought Megan for sure, but season 4, people were really down on Jackson, at least in the comments. Yeah, so, like, I always loved Jackson and thought he was great, but I was surprised how many people took to him in All Stars. And I think it's just because people love, like, the underdog and, like, the Megan Jackson story. And, like, he's more palatable as an underdog than he was when he's on the top, just, like, you know, like, just steamrolling people. But that surprised me. And I'm also surprised by how there's like nobody rooting for Leia at all. Like I kind of thought that some people would find her like whole shtick like appealing in a certain way. Like I thought there would be some people that were like, oh, this is I can kind of get behind this, you know? But really it's like universal. Like people do not seem on board with it at all. And I'll be interested to see how that develops in, you know, in the post merge. But like, yeah, that surprised me. People being mad.
It actually reminds me a lot of the reaction to Kat in season 4.
I think there's a lot of similarities between them, actually. I think there's a lot of similarities. I think that similar to Kat, I can understand it when you're watching the show. You're like, why are you like people in the cast saying the same stuff? Like, why are you doing this? You know, like if you don't like it, why are you doing it? Same thing with Kat, same thing with Leia. But like both of them, sometimes like the person that people put off in the confessionals is like to a degree a character for everybody, right? it's for everybody, the person you are in the confessionals is like the person you're trying to present on the show. And sometimes it is slightly different than who the person is when they're talking to other people in the game. And sometimes there's like cracks that slip through, and you can see what I would call like the deeper level of why people did some of the things they did. Like a good example of this is like on the show, Kevin is very clearly leaning into being like this super villain persona, right? And he's like fucked over Will because it was hilarious and he wanted to do it. And he's like a super villain, right? But then that scene with him and Adam in episode 6, when Adam's like, "Why'd you do this?" And Kevin's like, "Oh, people always ask me, why did I vote off Will?" And to be honest, I don't really know. It was just me trying to fix whatever I messed up with Bailey in a previous season. And I think right then, and in similar to when you see Kevin and Will talking at the end of episode 4, you can see that it's not as like black and white as like his confessionals would make you think, that he's just in it to cause pure chaos and be this pure evil guy. That Kevin also is being impacted by the friendship angle of all of this. And him and Bailey became best friends through playing Survivor together. And for all these years, were looked down upon by other people in the club for like how bad they messed up in season 2. And you can see that like actually impacted Kevin, and he wanted to like make it up to Bailey by like helping her out in the game this time around. And it's kind of like in doing so, potentially might have hurt his own game by voting off Will. And I think that's like a really compelling dynamic. And so Kat, similarly, there's moments with Kat where I think if you watch back season 4, it's not that she's just this like grumpy person that like hates fun or whatever. Is that she like doesn't have any idea what she signed up for, but isn't going to quit because that's not really who she is. She's like not a quitter really. And like she's like in the army now and stuff, you know? So like I think that quitting is like not something that really made sense to her. It's just not who she is. And I can respect that. But like the whole core concept of the game, of like lying to people, is just not something she likes. And I feel like Leia is also kind of like that in a way. And so you could ask, well, why did Leia choose to do it again? But it's like she's so competitive. Like, could she resist? Because she also does want to win. Despite everything else, she does want to win super bad. And I feel like it's just an interesting like dichotomy. It's like two different sides of her brain kind of pulling at it, you know?
You know, it is interesting. I feel like that's some of the stuff that maybe is tougher to see on screen. And that's the thing too, is like the two of us and maybe know Leia in person, but if you're watching the show, I mean, all you're seeing is Leia saying like, "I hate this game so much," you know, and you're like, well, I wanted X person to play. How come they couldn't have played instead of this person, Leia, who keeps complaining about the show that she's on, you know? So I can see that, but yeah, I mean, another angle to it is like, I mean, I personally loved watching Kat play. I would, even at the time during season 4 production, I feel like I was in the minority of people that like thought that Kat was super hilarious. Everyone else was like, Kat's the absolute worst. I hate Kat so much. I'm like, Kat's so funny. Like it's fun. It was funny to me that someone was playing the game and dragged all the way to the end that like also actively hated the game.
Oh,
so, like to me,
I thought Kat was hilarious. It's so different.
That, you know?
Again, it's so different. And Leia's also offering a different angle than anybody else in the show. You know, like if Leia was just another Jackson or Cooper like game bot, it's less. It's interesting to have different people who are reacting to it differently.
I agree. That's what Survivor's always been about. I mean, you see people that come from different sets of morals and different strategies, and you see these strategies and backgrounds and personalities clash, and that's always what I've found compelling.
Yeah,
like I've always found Survivor compelling because of the relational aspect of it. Some people, I think, maybe they care a little bit less about that, and they just like, I just want to see entertaining strategy between people who really care about the game, and that's fine. But that's, you know, that's not always what this is.
I guess
too.
To me, it's like the best Survivor would be if you get both of it, right? Like something I don't really like too much about the most recent Survivor seasons, like post season 40, is that so they've done a great job of like diversifying the cast, right? In terms of like people's backgrounds and like, you know, people's like gender and race and stuff like that. It's much more balanced than it used to be. But I think it's like that shouldn't come or okay. What they need to do also is now that they have done that, they need to also diversify the kinds of like personalities on the show. Because it feels like every player though plays the same way. Okay. So like they need to keep the diversity in terms of like, you know, race and gender and all that kind of stuff. And like, you know, they're casting like way more gay people now and like way more gender non-binary people and stuff like that. That's great. All of that needs to stay, but they need to cast some people that just have never heard of Survivor before. Or like they need to cast some more Leias, some more Cats. Like I need like a couple Kevins. I need some people that are just in it to stir the pot and cause drama. I feel like
diversity of strategy.
Yeah, diversity of strategy, right? Like all the people in the show now, they know what the show is, and they all kind of play a sort of similar way. And that doesn't create great drama to me. I want to see like clashes of personalities. More so, like I don't like the kumbaya where like people get voted out and they like shake hands and they're like, oh, good one. I don't like that. I like people get voted out and they're mad at each other. That's like good TV to me.
I mean, also to be fair, some of the things I've heard and read too in interviews is like there was a lot more of that stuff happening behind the scenes with like
is that
people
true?
that get along and like have beef, and some of that stuff like I think they either are cutting it from the edit or they're maybe like
interesting.
You know, like for example, I know another spoiler for season 39. Like Tommy was kind of edited to be sort of like this kind of generic like game body kind of like good social player, but I've heard that like he was actually like very villainous in that season. Same with like Sarah Lucina in the season she won, like insanely villainous. And they just like basically cut all that off. Like, oh, like the viewers aren't going to want to see a winner that was like villainous. So like, let's just cut all of that.
Interesting.
And like, make him kind of like a boring cookie cutter person. And like, so I think that part of it is just the editing choices. And part of it too is like the introduction of all these advantages takes time away from this like camp life kind of drama that you more normally would see in like the old Survivor seasons. And just kind of like that time is dedicated to like, okay, who has this idol and who has this beware? And this person has
there's too many advantages for sure.
You know, so it just takes up time on the episode.
I can agree with that.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Sarah, how's it going? Are you here to lose a Catan again?
I know, I feel like we're about to play Catan.
Plug, you guys should check out Sarah's Catan YouTube channel. You can see,
yes,
her lose to me at Catan. Sarah, what did you make of the cliffhanger? Because I was about to talk about that.
I know people were pissed. I think there could have been like, we could have gotten like one vote off. I think that would have been perfect. Like, I know there's supposed to be 2 boots that day, but like maybe just giving one could have been cool. I mean, yeah.
So like one of the, there was a couple reasons I did the cliffhanger that I feel like I didn't fully express in like the after show because I really wanted to let the season 1 people have most of the time talking. I just didn't really want to get in the way of them. But first of all, I'd always wanted to do a cliffhanger, always basically, because I just think it's cool because you're not expecting it. And like as soon as you can't be surprised by a show anymore, that's when it's time for the show to like end, you know? Like that's when it's time for the show to be done. If they can't surprise you, if the stories are, you always know what's coming. And so with a format like Survivor that's so like structured, we always expect certain things. I feel like it's inevitable that you'd want to mix it up at some point and do something like that. So I always wanted to do it. And then this episode also is like, there's so much going on. It's so confusing. But I was like, maybe it'd be best to give people some time to figure out what the fuck is happening. And like be able to kind of process through it before we dive into it. And the third reason was that in real life, when Lucy played the idol, she says, "I'm so sorry, Cooper. I didn't want to do it. I'm so sorry." And then when Cooper votes for Lucy at the end, he says the exact same thing. And as soon as he said that in real life, I was like, these 2 lines need to be in the same episode. Like that's got to be the title of the episode, and those need to be in the same episode. So I only ever considered, the reason I couldn't do like a cliffhanger of like, oh, you know, let's see Jesse get voted out and then we'll wait and see what happens, is because Lucy plays the idol and says it right then, and there'd be no way to do that. So basically the only options as far as I saw it was episode 6 and 7 would be one episode or some kind of cliffhanger. Because I was just like that them saying that like that was thematically, it was like, just felt like that's its own storyline. Like that has to be one episode of like, this is a Cooper and Lucy episode, basically about Lucy trying to fuck over Cooper, or not even like Cooper's. It's like who started this story? You know, like was it Cooper? Was it Lucy for playing the idol and trying to get rid of Cooper? So does that give Cooper justification for coming after? But was it Cooper because he was trying to vote Lucy off to begin with? Like
the chicken and the egg.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like who started the story? And so, yeah. So that's part of the main reason why I really thought it needed to be one episode. But then that didn't really come across, and I think that maybe that was like a mistake in the editing. Like even people from Survivor Michigan, even people on the cast didn't catch that they had both said that same line. And
I thought someone did catch it. I thought I saw a comment about it.
Some people did, but like definitely not as many. I thought it was like an extremely obvious thing. Because I was saying beforehand, like after episode 6, after episode 7, it'll be really obvious why I did it this way. And I don't think that came across. So I wonder, like somebody on the draft podcast was like, you could have done like a flashback maybe. And then like it would have been more clear that that's what was going on. Like, so that's interesting, you know?
I like the whole concept of keeping the viewers on their toes though. I like that. I feel like you do that a lot with your editing.
Yeah. It's not just to trick people though. It's not like some people have been like, oh, you're just trying to jerk people out as much as possible. I'm like, no. That's not what it is. It's specifically for whatever is going to make the best storylines and like be the most compelling story. Same thing with the idols. Like ultimately, I did a bunch of different versions of like the Pringle idol, and the best version was the version where you didn't know who had it. That was just the way that like was the most compelling way to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's the cliffhanger. There's not going to be any more cliffhangers though. I could because again, it wouldn't be surprising if you did it the second time, you know?
Right.
What about your decision to not really show Cooper's advantage until like he was playing it? Like, so I saw some people saying like, oh, like I forgot about the advantage. This feels like, you know, it was like too shocking, or like there wasn't enough like build up to this.
That one's interesting because it's like, every single Cooper lower third Chiron says the Phantom vote all season. So I didn't think it would super come out of nowhere. But also there's really no way to include it without it making it extremely obvious what's going to happen. And like I was kind of worried that it was too obvious as it was, honestly. I thought it was going to be like really, really obvious Cooper was going to use it. And it's not like Cooper ever considered using it in any other way than what he did. And unfortunately, him using it in that way means that even if we show him explaining it to Andrew, there's really nothing Andrew can do to like do anything different. Like if Andrew votes Leia anyways, it ends up in like a 1-to-1-to-1, which is just going to end to some kind of chaotic scenario that I don't think is going to ultimately be good for Andrew, or at the least is super risky. So it's like, it was kind of obvious what was going to happen. And yeah, it's also interesting because it's like Lucy, it's kind of like Lucy just got a little bonus lease on life. Like Lucy was supposed to go home, but she got given an idol from a different tribe, you know, that saved her. And now an advantage from a different tribe takes her out. In its own way, it's kind of poetic. And I did see some people being like, oh, this is BS. Like she got taken out by a BS way from a disadvantage that wasn't even on her tribe. And I was like, well, she also got saved though in kind of a BS way.
That's true.
Like, let's not forget that this was not her idol. And so like, there's a lot of shenanigans happening all over the board here. But it is brutal. It was tough that like we save Lucy and lose her in the same episode. But I do think it was a really great episode for Lucy, and she had a lot of really good lines. And I would fight back against the argument that it negates everything Lucy did, or it makes her whole storyline pointless because this happened. If anything, it makes it more tragic because what's like, this is Australian Survivor, spoilers for anyone who watched Australian Survivor, but the most recent episode of Australian Survivor, they lied to you about what the motivations of all the players were going into Tribal. So like, going into Tribal, they made it low. They spent multiple episodes building up this war between two players. And then the episode where they like built up to it, it was just a unanimous vote on some bottom player. And I was like, to me, that's much more manipulative, where like, it'd be like if the Kevin versus Will episode ended with a Megan boot and they all just vote off Megan and all of Kevin versus Will was a lie. Like, I don't want to ever lie to you about what the players' motivations are, you know? So like everything Lucy and Andrew were saying in that episode, they 100% believe. And so it's not like it negates all of that because the drama is still, what choice is Lucy going to make? Is she going to choose to like maybe play the game a little bit harder and vote off Leia? Or is she going to choose loyalty, which is kind of the choice that she's always made? It's a choice she made in season 2 to vote for Mallory instead of Nick. And so to me, that's still compelling, whether or not it ends up mattering, because it matters to her. So it's still, to me, it's still interesting. And on a rewatch, I feel like it's still compelling because it's just more, it's more dramatic. It's like ironic. It's a Greek tragedy. Like she thinks as she says it, she says like, I thought I was the one with the big choice to make. Like she has all this dramatic stuff. What choice is she going to make? And the irony of it is it doesn't even matter.
Like, but that was her narrative at the time.
Right.
So
exactly. So I think it still matters because it still matters to her as a character. But I can see from like a point blank view of like, the only thing that matters is who gets voted out, you know? Yeah, it ultimately doesn't really matter. And you could have, there's a version of the episode where you don't include a lot of the Lucy and Andrew and Leia dynamics, but that would feel more disingenuous to what was actually going on. At least is how I would look at it.
Yeah. Well, that is a really good explanation of why that happened.
But yeah. And there's also
watching that back, Sarah. Like, because that was your first time seeing like that tribal council.
Yeah. Oh wait, what was the question?
I was just like, how did like, what are your opinions on like the episode and how Lucy went out? Like, how did you feel about it?
like the whole time I had Cooper's vote in the back of my mind, but I like because of the editing, I wasn't sure if he was gonna do anything about it and just like hold on to it. Cause I think for some reason I thought more people knew about it, but talking to Lucy yesterday, like I realized I guess nobody really actually knew about it.
Yeah,
Which was
no
like
one knew about that.
which was a good play on Cooper's part. So I was kind of like, is he just gonna keep it a secret the whole time that he ever had it to like lower his start level, or is he gonna play it? So that was always at the back of my mind. But with like a 3-player tribal, which we've only seen like how many times have we seen a 3-player tribal in like Survivor history?
I don't know.
Not that many,
I'm
right?
the wrong person to
Survivor
ask.
Michigan, I want to say the only one was Aaron, Devin, and Dylan, and that was different because only Devin had a vote.
Right, and the only actual one did Stephanie LaGrossa. I feel like she was on like a really small tribe, but like basically it doesn't happen that often.
Steph and Bobby John.
Yeah, like it really doesn't happen that often. So like there's not much to go off of. Like there's not much history to go off of as to like what could happen. And there's all just like no room to hide. So I always thought it might be Lucy. I never thought, I don't know. I thought for me it was either Lucy or Andrew going that episode.
It also allows Lucy to become like, she goes from the last juror to the first juror, which is somewhat compelling in and of itself. And to me, at least, actually, like this isn't even really the end of Lucy's storyline. Like to me, there's a few people who I feel like their time on the jury in All Stars is like the final step of their Survivor Michigan story. And I would definitely say Lucy is one of those people. So like for the Lucy fans, I would say like, look out. Like it's not, Lucy still has, I think, like a really important role to play ultimately. Yeah. That's what I would say. Yeah. So yeah. But I can see why people also are disappointed in the cliffhanger because it does feel like then you lose some of the most excited, the people who you're most excited about, like, you know, Jackson, Lucy, Jesse going in the same episode is brutal. And I always knew that was going to be kind of brutal, but it's just as brutal to lose them in back-to-back episodes also, I think.
Yeah.
It's true. Just like losing Camila and Eliza on back-to-back episodes, like
exactly.
Doesn't matter how you put it, it's still going to be sad after watching both of those in a row.
Exactly.
I feel like Jackson going almost kind of sealed Lucy's fate a little more. Like if that had been Cooper, then Jackson would still be on their tribe.
Oh, it would have been totally different.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so
Jackson, Andrew, Lucy, and Leia go to tribal together. There's no phantom vote advantage. You imagine that Jackson and Andrew are sticking together. In that scenario, maybe they convince Lucy to vote off Leia if it's not going to go to a tie. Or maybe they win immunity.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly. Like maybe I mean Jackson's immunity king. We know.
Maybe Cooper was like carrying his tribe. Like it changes everything. It changes the whole dynamics of that challenge.
True.
Oh, totally. It changes everything.
And then Lucy's less stressed because she was really stressed during that challenge, which makes it harder to perform.
Yeah, we were talking about how like Lucy was like so frantic during that challenge, and like
it's stressful.
Yeah,
when your life is on the line and you know it, it's like.
I mean, she was very flustered during everything happened. And like I remember Lucy, like I want to say like she was like puking in the bushes because like of like this like the nerves and like the insanity of everything. Like,
oh my god!
There was just like a lot of chaos after that. Like double.
She definitely was. It was chaotic as hell. Yeah, everybody was on edge. Everyone had lied to each other. It was a messy scene.
Cooper and Bailey were like crying and like.
Oh my god!
Yeah, Leia was screaming at people. Lucy was puking. Yeah.
Dang, if you're puking, you must be really stressed.
Chaos.
Yeah, it was chaos.
He's probably also upset that Cooper didn't go home, but I want to say that he was like probably the most. He had to have been like the most like happy of everybody.
Probably, but he was also just like He was also just shell shocked. He was Cooper. He was also just like so confused and shell shocked.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I guess he's excited he didn't go home.
Probably, yeah. I mean, yeah. I guess.
I mean, this like this tribal for me is like the turning point of the whole season. Like the entire pre-merge builds to this double tribal, and I feel like after it is a different game, and it has ramifications for so long in the season.
It feels like the merge. Like it feels like a 15-person merge.
Yeah,
kind of like watching.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it is crazy. Like some of the. To me, like, you know, like the Ben bomb, or like I'm trying to think of other like the most iconic Survivor Michigan things, like the Rock
Andrew
Tribal,
rocks.
Andrew's Rocks, like It's Liz, like
Jeremy.
there's a couple of, to me, some of the things that will be on that level, like that are still to come, like in the post merge. There's like at least 2 outright like phrases that I feel
Okay.
like are like will be up there in terms of just like when you hear it, you'll know exactly what it is. Like you will know, oh yeah, that's that thing from Survivor Michigan All Stars. Like I know exactly what that is for sure.
Mm.
So I'm excited for that for sure. I'm excited for the post merge in general. It's crazy. It's crazy. I remember it happening and just being like, the merge episode is 2 hours long.
Oh
I
my
feel
gosh.
comfortable saying that. Most of the time we've been kind of cagey with a lot of the episode lengths because I've found it to be more dramatic somehow if you don't know exactly how long they're going to be. But I also don't want to like, I want people to be able to plan their time, and like plan out their evenings and stuff. And so the merge episode, I'll say, is 2 hours long, the longest episode besides the first one.
Okay.
So I won't say how many people get voted off in it though.
Oh.
But definitely a lot happens. A lot happens. And so people should be, it's like a new premiere, basically. It's like a new premiere episode. You have to reestablish, all right, now it's the merge. What are all the dynamics? What's going on? There's all kinds of more craziness. And we have to like settle down and get our act in order to figure out who's gonna win this thing,
The interesting thing though with All Stars is that it almost feels like the pre-merge, people are still almost playing like it is the merge already because everyone knows each other. Whereas like in a normal season, nobody knows each other from the other tribe yet. And here everyone's already talking with like people in another tribe. So like we're already getting like a lot of like, I don't know, collusion between people from different tribes.
There's a lot of tribal like shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
Something else I was thinking about recently was how the idea that, I can see that there's some people who are disgruntled about the amount of like cross-tribe communication, the amount of like friendships that are impacting it. The fact that I think it was something that going back to your question of what surprised you the most, I think to me, because I've known about All Stars for so long and like everything that happens into it, the idea of them all being like best friends and this having a dramatic impact on the game, that was just like assumed for me. Because like even before we played it, it was obvious that was going to be a big factor. But if you're like a fan, I guess like that's not something that came across as strongly in the previous seasons, or it's not something you would necessarily have expected. So I feel like that aspect has surprised people. To me, again, it's one of the more compelling aspects, and it's being investigated in a lot of different ways. But also it's like part of it does go back, like Survivor Michigan has always been about that from the very beginning. Like Thal and Tarowski in season 1 have an outsized advantage in the game because they're roommates and like have a secret alliance that no one knows about. Like in a perfectly fair Survivor game, either nobody would know each other ahead of time or like everybody would have a secret partner like Tarowski and Thal. Like that's not fair. They lied to George and production and pretended they didn't know each other to get cast because they were worried they wouldn't get cast. And Cooper and Leia knew each other. And all these seasons, there's always been aspects of that. Like Cheaty knew Bailey or something along those lines, right? In season 2.
But they didn't know going in. It was kind of like, oh, didn't know you were playing.
Well, Thal and Tarowski did know going in.
Yeah, they had a bigger one.
Kat and Aaron Murphy are in the same sorority, and that doesn't have a huge impact on the game. But like that's part of that's
Avery.
Yeah, Survivor Michigan, like It's Liz, that moment comes down to the fact that Thal's choosing his real life friendship with Tarowski over the game move of what he should do is send Tarowski to Rocks. So it's like this has been a core part of our identity as a show from the very, very beginning. And to me, I feel like this season is just taking that to like pushing it to the ultimate limit of really like stressing those boundaries of like,
friends,
are you willing to break friendships to win this game? What point is too far? Is anything too far? Maybe it's isn't.
Super interesting because some people like Leia take it very seriously with those connections, but then some people like Sarah G are like, it's literally just a game. So there's like different interpretations of it, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, also Sarah G isn't as tight with a lot of the people, right?
That's true. Yeah. That is true. Lucy was saying yesterday she saw it as more of a game too, but then I'm like, I don't know, because your gameplay said otherwise because she was siding with Leia at the end there.
Yeah, Lucy is someone who I feel like would like to think that they don't take it as, because it's easy to say when you're voting off people like Aaron and them had come against Lucy and they were friends in real life too. Like Lucy and Aaron were good friends, but like Dylan and Aaron were coming against her. So it's easier to vote them off. She says it in episode 7. She says it's easy when the people did something to deserve it. and you can justify it in your head, well, Aaron and Dylan are coming after us. They tried to vote me off the first tribal. So like if I'm Lucy, so it's like, it's easy to come after them. But then somebody like Leia, it's harder for her to Leia and Andrew. She feels like, oh, well, these are two people I like, and neither of them really did anything that bad to me. So like, I don't know what to do. And it's like I think it is interesting. And we see people react to it in different ways.
Yeah.
I do feel like Lucy though, like it feels like she doesn't take it as personally. I mean, she does still impacted by the friendship stuff, but like, you know, she gets voted off and she's like, wow, like good gameplay.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So, like,
she probably takes it somewhat she takes like voting, getting voted off easier than like almost anybody else did, probably, right?
Yeah. Well, it was also an iconic vote off, which I think she appreciated.
Yeah. The fact that it took, basically an act of God to get rid of her.
Yeah. No, it's actually funny. Like, I feel like in some ways, like Lucy's fans and people watching this show were more upset on Lucy's behalf for how she got voted off than like she was like herself. And she is like herself. Like, it's kind of funny. She's like, okay, wow, like good gameplay. Like, I mean, to be fair, she didn't know it was Cooper at that moment, but she still was like, all right, like I'm out.
Did you guys ask her, like,
this is so unfair, it's an advantage? Lucy, like, I was like, okay.
Did you guys ask her? Did you guys ever ask Lucy like what she thought when she eventually found out? I'm assuming at some point she found out that Cooper did it. Like, what did she think about that?
We didn't ask her that.
I thought she knew at the time that it was. Oh, I guess.
No, because like it's just like
now
it's like an advantage has been played. Like Lucy definitely thought that it was Andrew, and like basically like
everybody thought that.
That's what everyone in the game thought that. As well. Like, it wasn't like it was like there wasn't any way to publicly tie this to Cooper.
Yeah, everybody thought that. So we'll have to see what happens with that, if Cooper's able to keep it quiet or not in the future episodes.
It's kind of like a secret only him and Andrew know about.
Yeah. Will either of them be able to keep it quiet? I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I think that, leaving Lucy talking about what happened, like she doesn't necessarily like, oh, I'm so mad about this advantage screwing me over. Like it seemed like much more of her like take on it was like, oh, like I wish I had done these things differently. Like maybe it would have been different if I would have, if this Jackson plan would have went differently, or if I had like lied to Andrew and like gotten along with his Leia plan, or like I think that she thinks she was kind of coming at it more from like, what could I have done differently, which makes sense because like you can't really be upset about something that like you had no control over yourself.
Yeah, that seems like a very smart way of. That seems like a very smart way of thinking about it, honestly.
Yeah. So that makes sense. But I'm sure like she already was like annoyed with Cooper at like this time for like what happened in the game. So I'm sure that like when she found out, she was just like even more annoyed about it.
Oh, I'm sure
that was.
I'm sure she was. Yeah. One thing I'd be curious about is how much have you guys like paid attention? You probably haven't at all to like the music in this season.
Oh, I've heard the Shantham a couple times.
Yeah, the Shantham.
Yeah, that one's been the most obvious. That one's like for the Girls Alliance. Every time the Girls Alliance gets talked about, the Shantham gets played.
I will say there's a lot of non-Survivor music that I really appreciate. During the scavenger hunt challenge, I really like the music during that challenge. And then also like in the beginning, is it Star Wars or what is it? Lord of the Rings? There's something in the beginning.
In the beginning of what?
Just like the beginning of the episodes when it's like.
Oh, that's Survivor. That's like the Winners at War theme. The Star Wars music was used in a bunch of the trailers.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking of. The trailers.
Oh, yeah.
In the very beginning of the first episode, when it has the like Steve Prefontaine quote and like the All Stars logo comes up, there is like a piece of music played that I've been referring to like privately as like the All Stars like theme that like is in all of the episodes. And if anybody like wants to do a rewatch or anything before episode 8, I would recommend just like paying attention to where that music crops up, because that's being used in like, similar to how they would use like the Force theme in Star Wars, like in like moments of great importance to the season or to what I would call the overall like theme and like point of the whole story. So that's definitely cropping up, and I would like yeah, that I pay attention to. And there's also a lot of people who have their own theme music. Like some people have caught, not every single person does, but some people have caught on to it, that like there are some people who have their own theme music. And I think after certain episodes in the post merge, it might be more obvious. You could go back and be like, oh, wait a second. Wow, this
every time.
Like
this was there.
Tom had his
yes,
own like
Tom had
Valkyrie
the flight of the
music.
Valkyries,
Yeah.
right? That was very obvious. Some of the other ones
like
are slightly less obvious.
I feel like there's like some
Okay.
sort of like fake idol or like kind of trickery kind of music, or maybe it's like a I use it with Jackson, and then like it's kind of extended to just like idol.
Yeah. That's kind of like that's kind of like Megan Jackson theme / like fake idols. It's all kind of its own. That piece of music is also
it's all kind of jumbled together.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like, does it feel like the music would be good here?
No, I did really love like how you fit in like scavenger hunt music with like, oh, like these people are lip syncing to this song, then like it continues.
Yeah.
Or like Megan doing
that.
what was it called?
I Will Survive.
And, like,
yeah.
Then it like continues. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I put a lot of I spent so much time on the music because I just got like sick of the same tracks over and over again from the other Survivor seasons. So like
especially
there's a lot
of longer episodes, you're gonna have more music to fill it up with.
There's a lot of Survivor. There's still a lot of Survivor music, but there's a lot of other music that I thought sounded like, similar enough, or this that I liked, that I thought we could fit in. One of what you're talking about, like the I Will Survive, there's what I think is like a really funny music editing moment in episode 8 that people should look out for as well, because I thought it was very funny. But yeah, I don't know. That's the thing with the music. Yeah, the All Stars theme. It's some good music.
Yeah, everything's so intentional.
Yeah, you have no idea the amount of I have a journal I've been keeping about like editing All Stars that I've been like writing down my thoughts and stuff. And I actually just had a really, really good idea for the finale today for like something that like I realized could like tie together some stuff. And I was like, sometimes, okay, so like I read it. I think it's Agatha Christie, but it could have been somebody else. But I'm going to attribute it to Agatha Christie. I read an Agatha Christie interview once where she was talking about how one time she put a gun in a drawer at the beginning of the book, and she didn't know why she put the gun in the drawer, but she just knew it was a good idea to have a gun in the drawer. Whoa. And then like near the end, she was like, oh, I needed that gun to be in the drawer to like solve this plot thing. And that's how I felt this morning when I was thinking about this in the shower. I was like, I don't know why I did that one particular thing, but now I realized that it was the perfect thing to do. And it's going to like tie everything together in a really great way. So
wow.
I'll be able to explain what that is after the show's
over. Is
the
finale going to be like 3 hours?
We'll see. I don't think so, but it's not 3 hours right now, but
okay.
I'm not going to make any promises. I don't think so. I feel like that would be a bit much.
Do you edit after like the episode before has come out?
Well, I basically have all the episodes done except for the finale.
Okay. So do you ever like tinker with it?
I usually there is some small tinkering that will happen up till like when the episode comes out,
Okay, yeah.
But like usually it's just like I'll keep watching them through, noticing different like music things or audio adjustments or like, I've watched these episodes like a billion times.
I know. That's like when you edit something, you just like watch it so many times.
I'll notice like imperfections that nobody else would ever possibly notice,
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it's pretty wild, honestly. It's kind of weird. Like when it's all over, I kind of want to take a long break and then rewatch the whole series, because I've realized that like some like of the season 2 and season 3 episodes, like I don't even really remember them that well anymore. Yeah. Like I used to like Jerry Seinfeld would be like, oh, I don't remember that episode of Seinfeld. And I'd be like, how? He's Jerry Seinfeld. How does he not remember? But I already don't remember episodes of Survivor Michigan, and there's not nearly as many episodes as there was of Seinfeld. So I can kind of understand it, how eventually you're like, you just did it for so long, it starts to all blend together.
Yeah, I don't even remember certain things from our season.
Sarah, I'm curious, going back to the actual episode, what did you think of the conversation between Bailey and Sarah in this one?
Could you remind me what it was?
It's like Bailey and Sarah talking, and Bailey's like blaming her for like flipping, and Sarah's like, okay, but you were trying to vote me out.
Oh, I mean, I'm with Sarah on that one. She was just trying to save herself. Like she was on the chopping block. Bailey never really was. So I feel like when you find yourself on the chopping block, like most people will do anything to save themselves. So I'm on Sarah's side for that one for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Do you not feel the same way?
No, I don't know. I think it's
Mhm.
interesting. I
Yeah.
don't like to like publicly take sides on who I think is right or wrong in a lot of these instances, at least till like after the season. Like I like it. I want it to speak for itself kind of, and I want
Yeah.
people to form their own conclusions. And I think that both of them make interesting points. That's kind of why I won't like come out and say that I like fundamentally disagree with Leia's point of view on the game or anything like that. Like maybe I'll comment on that after the show is over. But for now, I'm kind of like I'm presenting this point of view. I'm presenting these other points of
Right.
view, and it's up to the audience to decide whose point of view they agree with.
Yeah.
One of the things I think is interesting with Sarah and Bailey is they have this like very public disagreement at like beginning of the episode, right after the tribal, and then like they have this conversation later. But then, like near the end of the episode, like you see them form this alliance together of 7 people. It's kind of like Sarah's original idea, except for like I think they sub out some people, switch some people around, but it seems like they are now in an alliance, even after like beginning of the episode, like they're screaming at each other, or Bailey's screaming at Sarah, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Sarah tends to work with people who she says she doesn't want to work with, but then like she just ends up working with them for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Oh.
But now it's like, so they made this alliance thinking that like, oh, Andrew's going to get voted off. We need to have some sort of contingency against maybe this like Sam and Adam and Leia kind of Lucy kind of group. And then Andrew doesn't get voted off.
That's true.
Do you think that maybe he would fit in with that group? Maybe not. Either way, there's this 7-person thing supposedly happening at the merge.
Yeah, I feel like that's gonna change real fast.
Yeah?
Yeah, I feel like with this group of people, it's always like in and out of these groups. Although there are some certain solid, like I feel like you, Adam, you and AJ, very solid. Like there's like smaller pairs that I feel like I could see not turning, but like with a group of 7, there's no way there's not going to be like movement within that.
So do you think that's the way the season is going to play out? Like kind of like,
yeah, I don't think a group of 7 is going to stick together. But I think within the group of 7, certain people would stick together. Yeah.
So you think it's going to be probably like more like maybe these like pairs or like micro alliances?
Yep.
Than like big.
Like joining together for like maybe one vote.
Who do you see as like the like most clear kind of like pairs or like groups in the game?
You and AJ. Leia and Cooper kind of. I still see them as like a pair just because of how close they are. Who else? Megan's kind of by herself now. It used to be Megan and Jackson.
Megan and Kevin a little bit. We see in this episode.
Maybe, yeah. I feel like that's a little more one-sided with Kevin.
I thought that was one of the underrated, really, really, really funny scenes is like them meeting up. Kevin is just, gone through this whole elaborate plan to try and get Jackson out and give him the fake idol, all this shit. And Kevin's like, oh, like I'll be more transparent with you. And like, I'll tell you like less lies, like maybe a few less lies. And Megan's like, that's not being transparent, Kevin. Like, what are you like? You have no idea how to be an ally.
Yeah, he really does. I don't know. I don't know if I see. I'm like trying to think who else there is. Andrew and Cooper, maybe a little bit. Cooper has a few.
Do you think, Sarah, that the Bailey 7 will just become Bailey 8 with Andrew in it?
No, I was saying like I think something's gonna happen. There's gonna be splits. There's gonna be replacements.
So you don't think that group's sticking together?
Not in the long run, no.
Okay, but like, do you think it could for a vote or two, or not really? Even that?
Maybe for a vote, but even within the vote, there's gonna be like talk of like not sticking together.
I mean, like, it'll be interesting. We've already seen, right, that like once large groups come together in this game, it's very difficult to find names that you can get large groups of people to agree on. So it's gonna be interesting to see how people operate within that context in the All-Stars post-merge.
Like it could be where everyone tries to keep up the facade of it, but then within it, there's cracks and people are secretly plotting against each other. But they're all trying to keep up the facade.
That's the thing with all the connections. It's like if everyone's connected to each other, how are you ever going to get a majority of people to agree to anything? You know, we saw this happen in this episode 6 for like, you couldn't really get people to agree on who the 2 people in the bottom should be. And
Although
people
that
go
was
home.
2 people. It might be easier for 1.
That is true. That is true. It is kind of funny that nobody got their way in that tribal council, though. Like, not one person left that tribal council like happy with what happened.
Yeah, not a single person got what they wanted, which I think is pretty funny.
So we have a little bit of time to do our second edition now of the Dogs Gotta Speak segment.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I got some great.
In?
All right, so I just got to find the questions. All right, here we go. This one is from shout out to Ethan Amato, somebody on Discord that sent Jack a message. So the first question is directed at Cooper James. Cooper, what methods and strategies did you utilize while playing to lower your threat level before and or during Survivor Michigan All-Stars? So here is Cooper's response to that question.
So, to be honest, I really didn't. That's the short answer. There really wasn't a way for me to lower my threat level. Like, I could have sat there and done nothing and probably still been perceived as one of the bigger threats that people were always going to look to take out. So for me, it was less about lowering my own threat level and ensuring that I was playing with people who also had a big threat level. And so that's what you'll see in a lot of my decisions is, who can I keep around that could potentially even be a shield for me, or people could come after them before they come after me. So it was less about lowering my own threat level, which I could have tried to do, but I honestly just gave up on it, and keeping around people who were going to be targets for one reason or another, whether they were a big threat, they were causing chaos, they just didn't have many connections. Keeping around those types of people is probably the best answer I can give.
Yeah. I mean, you just got to keep people you can throw under the bus before you.
Sounds like something Kevin would say.
And also, if everyone's a threat, then no one's really a threat. So
yeah,
the more threats you keep around, but at some point, unless you want to go to the end with them, they're gonna have to go. But Cooper, for as long as possible.
The meat shield strategy.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a good strategy. It really is.
Yeah,
I stand by the meat shield strategy.
Absolutely. No, it's funny. I don't know if you've seen the 2.5 podcast, but like, there's just like was like a alliance that was just like got called the meat shields, and then like basically all the girls like heard about it and like hated it, and like Jack got blindsided because of it. So,
okay.
Cooper's very, very careful not to say the word meat and before the word shield. If you just say shield, that's fine. But if you say meat shield, like no, that's when it's sudden. Yeah.
I'll say that I think Cooper sees these other threats as men and women. I think that he's not exclusive about the kinds of people he views as like big threats.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not what I thought. I interpreted meat shield as literally just like a human shield.
Yeah, that is what it means.
Yeah.
Things can get taken out of context, and that's obviously not what Cooper was talking about. So second question is for Bree Reed. I have a lot of respect for the gameplay you've shown so far in the season. How do you think your social and strategic gameplay differs from your first time playing Survivor Michigan? And this is Bree's response to that question.
Are you not giving a shout out to this person who asked the question?
Yeah, who is this?
Ethan Amata got a shout out. Oh, okay.
Ethan Amato sent locally.
Yeah.
Ethan Amato, once again, asking this question.
I think the main thing that I try to do versus my first season is just try to be less expendable to people. I think ultimately that was a bigger factor that I really considered at the time, was the fact that, like, even though Sarah was like my number one, like I just wasn't even like in her top 3 people that she cared to keep in the game. And so like I tried to make sure the people that like I ultimately really trusted also had trust in me. I think I also just tried not to have like any beef with people, which is also why like I decided to be cordial with Will. I didn't really think I was going to be in an alliance with Will when I decided to squash our beef that during week 1. So like ultimately when he did go home, I wasn't that pressed about it. But I do think that like was something that I wouldn't have done in season 2. Like I know I didn't like Maggie at the beginning of season 2, and then ultimately we did work together a little bit to kind of make Sarah Avery a bigger target than me. But I like just made sure I didn't have any beef this year because ultimately too I also didn't want it to a situation where she went to tribal, and because Will and I were the loudest about our dislike for each other, that ultimately made us like the 2 options for tribal council. So I was like, I'll just be cordial with them, and then lo and behold, we ended up being in an alliance. I also just think that because I was older and I do think people already knowing me helped me be in a better starting position in the game. I do think because I was, I'm pretty sure the youngest on Ohana, that like because the power alliance ultimately ended up being like all the older players, just at that time, because I was the first year, we just were like at different places in our lives. We had different social lives. I don't think like for them, like they all bonded because they could find common ground. But like, I mean, looking back at it, it probably was hard to find common ground with a first year. And honestly, I did just prioritize Survivor more than I did my first year. Like, I feel like because not that I cared more necessarily, but I had more power in controlling like my class schedule than I did my first year. Like I made sure I didn't do any credits with an actual play, which would have meant I had like rehearsals 6 times a week. I made sure that didn't happen while I was playing All Stars, versus I didn't have any power to control it happening during season 2. But also like, I'll be honest, like I don't think I really pregame too much over the year. Like, even though I think my Will with Beef was the most like public one, I do believe there were most people in the cast who like knew that I really wasn't their biggest fan, and I wasn't gonna. I didn't spend a whole year, haha, it up, being fake to people that I necessarily like, and so I kind of went into the game knowing that I had a lot of people who like definitely loved and trusted me, but I also knew that there are people who weren't going to trust me because I never gave them a reason to trust me. And in hindsight, I guess I maybe would have worked harder during the pregame, but in my opinion, I think I like that I did it because I do think having less, like, ultimately in a game where everyone has a bunch of alliances, cutting that into like a core people, trimming the fat just so core people that you trust was really significant, because it's just like everyone was telling everyone everything, and having people who like ultimately may not tell your secrets to people was just so important. And I think I was able to like find people like that who were going to keep what I said safe to the extent that they could.
Wow,
All
what a
right.
thorough answer.
Yeah, get to hear a lot of Bree's strategy.
I think she had some good points, because I do remember her having a tough schedule her first time around, and people did talk about that because she would always have like theater rehearsal late at night, and that's a real thing when you're playing College Survivor, because people don't want to meet at like weird times.
Definitely.
And I liked what she was saying about keeping people, like actually aligning with people who have them high on their list as well. Like I feel like the first time around, like I think me and her were pretty close. Like I think I was one of her closest allies, but I don't think she was one of like she was like lower on the list for me. So I like her strategy of like making sure it's like even this time around. I think that's really good.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of kind of like what Kevin said in the first episode of like the most dangerous player in All Stars is one who's learned from their mistakes. And it seems like Brie has really like thought a lot about what brought her down in season 2 and is like actively working to change those things, which I think is really smart.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We have time for one more. This one is a quick answer from AJ. So this question is from Naomi. If you've seen LRG podcast, she's done a lot of their stuff over the years. So her question for AJ is, I'm dying to hear what AJ did after Megan called to ask about the idol being fake. Was it pure panic? And AJ says, response.
Honestly, I like really feel like the entire night I was just so live wired and in tune with every single thing that was happening in the game, and just like seeing like this plan that I wanted to work so bad that I was just like winging it as things were like slowly fucking up, like fall apart because of such a minute detail. It was like a panic, but like a calm panic of like, yeah, this is like happening. But I'm like so like determined in that moment to prove that I'm not like a puppet of Sam, which was like the belief at the time. Show that I can actually like move people around and like have social capital in this game, and then be like just break something. Because if I could like break one thing, then maybe I can break another thing and another thing and another thing.
I love AJ. He's really one of my favorites. I just think he's so funny. When he was dancing to the theme song, I was dying.
That was so great. And AJ, once again, we can't talk about enough, like the incredible new hair.
The hair.
It's great.
The tat.
No hair, AJ. You gotta love it.
Does it grow back in the season? Like by the end of the...
I mean,
by the
depends
finale,
how long he lasts. Depends how long he lasts.
But he's on the jury now, right? So like...
It's true.
I wonder
if it's jury like, or in the finals.
You can say by the time we reach the end of the season, wherever AJ is at, whether the final 3 or the jury or whatever, yeah, like you can see a visible difference in like.
Okay, so it's kind of like.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah. It starts growing back for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having me on. Always great to be on my favorite Survivor Michigan podcast. You guys have done such a great job, and especially this season, I've really just thought it's been such a good podcast, and I've loved all the exit interviews. I can't wait for the Lucy one, and can't wait to see all the rest of them throughout the rest of the season. So
yeah,
keep up the good work. Hope you guys are enjoying the show.
Heck yeah.
And get ready because the craziness is just getting started. This post merge is something else. I think we're gonna see some things that I don't think people have ever seen. So
wow,
people aren't ready.
Bold statement.
People aren't ready for some of the stuff that's to come. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, so great having you on and hearing your takes, Ian. Definitely anytime. Hit us up for Dogs Gotta Speak too. I mean, you can give any editor's notes. We'll love to hear them. And really excited to see what the post-merge has in store. It's going to be really exciting.
Yeah. We'll have to get together again after the season, and then I can lay it all out there and not have to hide any secrets about Survivor Michigan ever again. That'll feel so good to know that you could ask me anything about any season of Survivor Michigan, and I will tell you.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Also,
the seasons I know about, the Generation 2, that's a different story. I don't know anything about those seasons. You ask me about them, I'll be like, I have no idea.
Season 10? That's what I want to know about.
Season 10?
Season 10, season 11.
No, dude, I have made such an active effort to know as little as possible about all of those seasons. Like starting with season 6, I was like, I don't want to know anything about this. I want to be like you. I want to sit back. I just want to watch the show and just be able to enjoy it.
Totally unspoiled on after season 5. You know nothing.
No, I want to be completely unspoiled. And I've tried as hard as possible to be unspoiled. So
it's great. Also, for those of you who want to hear eulogies and rankings and stuff, we can just do them all. We can just do a bunch of them. Episode 8. But let's have a bunch of eulogies, a bunch of rankings. I don't know. Because I forgot about that, and my hotel checkout was 2 minutes ago. So
is that why they were calling you?
What?
I heard your
Yeah, they were
hotel
buzzing.
phone
Probably.
rang.
They're probably saying like, get out of this hotel room. So that is what I'm gonna do.
Okay.
Wonderful talking to you guys.
Bye.
all right, see you guys.
Bye.